All right, Pastor Brendan Galvin, it is surreal that you're actually here in this building. We have been searching and searching for years for the right fit to come and be a part of what we're trying to do here at St. Paul's. And so it is awesome. And it's a heartfelt joy to have you here. Can't wait for the congregation to get to meet you as well. But first, before we get there, just a little context for everyone. You and your wife, Bridget, are going to be parents any day now.
Soon. Maybe by the airing of this video.
Yes, exactly. The due date's just days away. So how are you feeling about being a dad? I can remember this time myself. It's a very unique, strange, unpredictable time. How are you feeling? How are you feeling about being a dad? All the things that come with it. What comes to mind?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling tired. I'm feeling excited.
Okay.
So the other day, Bridget and I finished our Bradley Method class.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
I did Bradley Method as
so
well.
You know. Yep.
Yes, you're gonna be a coach.
Yep, I'm gonna be a coach.
I
got the little card in the mail.
Yes.
But I looked at Bridget and I said, okay, so what do we do once the baby's here?
Yes.
I was like,
yes. Yeah, you didn't take that class.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute, we missed the class on that. So
Yeah.
I think we're both really excited.
Yeah.
And terrified. I mean, like as one should be.
Right.
And all the things.
Yeah.
And we're transitioning all kinds of ways. So
oh my gosh.
There's been a lot of moves. We're in between homes as we move, and so
in careers,
changing jobs, and the whole thing.
All the most stressful things at once.
But
great.
Might as well get them out of the way.
That's right. That's right. Just make it all happen at once.
Yeah.
Well, we're excited for you guys and are excited to meet the little one as well, and we'll keep you guys in prayer. And I guess just trust the nurses. You know, those first day or two, they're gonna be there for you. They took all the classes.
Yeah, that's
on
good.
What to do now. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about your story, about some of where you come from, and especially about your call and journey into ministry.
So I'm from Los Angeles, born and raised. All the way through college, and then moved to the East Coast to go to Duke.
Wow. I don't know anyone who's from Los Angeles. And we haven't really talked about that part of your life a whole lot.
I moved here, and I think the first purchase I had to make was shoes.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have shoes.
Oh.
Yeah. I literally only owned flip-flops.
Wow.
Yeah, so,
okay.
Yep. And I mean, that's not even to mention like a coat or any leather material.
Right.
No, it was
hand warmers.
Yeah. Didn't have anything. So born and raised in LA. My home was sort of marred with a lot of pain and turmoil from my mom's. She had systemic lupus, and she died a couple years ago. And so that was a big part of my story, was being next to a lot of suffering. And I'm sure there are folks in the congregation that understand what it means to have a family member sick. And so it was my sister and I and my mom, and she was often really sick. And by about high school, I was starting to ask a lot of big questions about those sort of existential things. Mm-hmm. What's the point of life? What's the point of suffering? Is there a point? And so it was really like second half of high school that I started kind of investigating religion in general. Mm-hmm. Read through all the major religious stuff I could for every different religion, and had lunch with rabbis and went to the Muslim club on Fridays and the Christian club on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
So I was like really trying to sort of internalize a lot of these things and question a lot of these things.
Sure.
So that was sort of the intro into finding Jesus, was beginning this journey of questioning.
Yeah.
And my uncle had sent me to a church camp. Ended up reading through the New Testament like 4 or 5 times.
Wow.
And like begging to go to lunch with all these pastors, and just really
as a high schooler.
Yeah. I was like, but I mean, I was also witnessing a lot of really deep stuff.
Oh yeah,
And so I think that I was trying to work it out.
And coming from a blank slate, right?
Yeah,
in terms of faith, more or less.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, my family is sort of vaguely Methodist for Christmas and Easter, and my uncle's a very serious Baptist, so that was kind of where that came to play. Mm-hmm. So like church was always sort of in the background, but never in the forefront. And Jesus, in the same way, was sort of a background
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And it was, so the sort of defining moment for me, my pivotal moment was this period where things were really bad at home. And I was really seriously looking into the claims of some other religions and thinking through things. And in Islam, there's a sense of balance, and like you are weighed against your deeds. And that's very clear.
Yeah.
And so like you have to achieve your righteousness.
Yeah.
And that's what gets you into the door.
Yeah.
And I was reading Luke 14. It was like 2 in the morning. I was so tired, but I was also just really upset.
Yeah.
And in Luke 14, Jesus talks about the kingdom of heaven being this big banquet where all these people are invited.
Wow.
And
Yes.
nobody comes. So, you know,
Yes.
so then go get the people that aren't really welcome.
Yeah.
And the text says the poor, the blind, and I think the maimed or something. But it's all the people outside the temple.
Wow.
And I was reading it, and I was like, oh, that's me. I'm the one that's never been at the table.
Wow.
I felt like the poor one that
Yeah.
wasn't invited until now.
Yeah.
And I just remember that being a really powerful moment.
Wow.
And I was like, I don't understand everything, and I don't understand like all the big questions, but whatever answers I want to come to, I want it to be behind this Jesus guy. Like, that's the God I can buy into. That's the kingdom I can like be a part of.
Yeah.
Is this kingdom where like all the people you least expect come to a table and are treated as the honored guests.
Wow.
And so it was really powerful.
Yeah.
And so I ended up going to a mega church and getting baptized in front of like thousands of people.
Wow. Wow.
And that like jettisoned me on this journey, this quest to figure more out. And, ended up doing like in college, I was part of a Christian club and helped start a community house and ended up studying religion academically and got first a bachelor's degree in it, sort of sociology emphasis in religion, which is cool.
What pointed you in the direction of Duke Divinity School? You know, was there a professor? Was there what's the story there?
So college was also like I try not to define my story with the hardship, but there was definitely a hardship in college. I lost several key family members and friends back to back in college. So I struggled. There was a lot going on, and it was during sort of a tumultuous time. But I had this great mentor and friend who was the chair of the department. And I remember I was just about finished with school, and he was like, why don't we go talk? And he told me, he's like, I know it's been hard, and you're going to want to stop. And he said, but I need someone to replace me when I retire.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, what a deep and meaningful compliment. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay. And he's like, I don't know. Like he said, I want you to keep going. Wow. And you would do well in graduate work and all this other stuff. And so I really heard that, and I took a year off from school and lived in Hollywood and sold wine, and it was a great time.
Oh.
Yeah, it was really fun.
We'll have to hear more about that sometime.
It was good.
That's good.
So anyways, and I hear the Lutherans like their wine.
Oh yeah,
so
Theology on Tap was just coming to mind.
All right, perfect.
Yeah, work with Don Howard at the bar, to choose the right wine.
Well, there we go, perfect. So in that year, I really thought, well, who do I want to be, and what do I want to be doing? And I couldn't shake that, like, the church and community had been really formative after I was baptized.
Right.
And even going through college, living in this ministry community house type thing, I don't know if I would have graduated college had it not been for the folks there. And so I knew I wanted to study more deeply how theology integrates into all that. And how do we think about that?
Well, thank you. No, just a profound story about real life meeting the gospel as well. That Luke 14 story that you told, and it's inspiring, encouraging for me to hear, faith being a real thing that really shapes us, and God showing up that way. So thank you for sharing that. You've been serving a church in New Jersey, or I guess multiple churches, kind of, right?
Yep.
The last few years.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like you loved being a student, you loved the inquiry, you loved the conversation, you loved the kind of the epiphanies, and the relevant insights. These last few years serving in congregations, what have you found you love most about being a pastor?
Probably the same things, like there's something so beautiful about a congregant having an aha moment, and I love when people can take the faith and tradition that we have and overlay it on life and say, oh wow, like this is meaningful and beautiful. That is incredible. Like that's why I get out of bed,
Yeah,
it's the
absolutely.
And so my task the last few years has been in the United Methodist Church is how do we take the rhythms and beliefs and life of the church and make it meaningful with all those aha moments to people who otherwise are not invited to the table. And how do we like translate the beauty of our faith and tradition in a way that people can receive, and make their own, and do with it at like whatever is meaningful and important to them. And so that work led me to doing church planting work and doing all sort of like church revitalization work and leading some, taught some seminars on some things and was part of some cohorts and so it was a really wonderful. I think the most wonderful part was sort of saying, okay, here's what we have. Now let's just play with everything and see what works. We don't worry about failing. We don't worry about like the success or the monetary stuff. Let's just see what is the most impactful, meaningful way to be church for people's lives. And that was like a great experiment and really a wonderful season.
To try to share, to bring about those aha moments for others who might not have been invited to the table. But the creative challenge of doing that in a way where you've got to rewrite the script, or where you've got to, clearly however we were doing it before wasn't working to make them feel invited. So how can we do that? Because we truly believe and have experienced the joy of faith and aha moments and want to share that. But you gotta get creative in getting it out there to others. Is there like a story you can think of where something beautiful came together? As you said, this is what we've got to work with. Let's do something. Can you paint a picture of that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, what first comes to mind is like, as a church planner, you're just scrappy, right? So like, you got $10 in your pocket, and how do you make it? How do you stretch it?
I grew up in the church plant experience. The first 6 members of the church were my 3 siblings and my 2 parents. My dad's office was in the spare room in the house.
There you go.
Totally scrappy. Setting up folding chairs or whatever. So.
Ready, set, go. Like, do what you got to do.
Yeah, exactly.
So you know the routine.
Yeah.
It's totally like that. And I think there's been, so I'll sort of leave names and personas out of it. But recently there has been a situation in North Jersey where there's a large evangelical church, and they're grappling within that evangelical church around leaders who are gay. And whether or not to allow them and what to do, and it was really mishandled. So a lot of people felt very abused and unheard, and there was sort of a large group of people who decided to leave because they saw this really abusive situation unfold. So somehow a couple of these folks heard about what we were doing and wanted to have a meaningful church experience where they could safely process these questions and concerns, and some of them were gay themselves, and were trying to figure out, okay, so how do I maintain an identity as Christian and also be me in this other way? And there's this in the last few months, this really meaningful conversation that unfolded, especially with one or two people.
Mm.
And it ended with them feeling like maybe for the first time they had been seen and heard and loved.
Yeah.
And they were trying to understand, what does it mean to now love me again?
Yeah.
I think they spent a long time sort of hating themselves.
Right.
And so stuff like that is really important to me.
Yeah.
And what I appreciate about it is that the question and conversation about God was real and deeply involved. Like, they had a lot of questions, and a lot of it had to do with scripture and theology and practice.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to faithfully understand the traditions and theologies while simultaneously being free to flourish as people. And that's kind of where they're at in their journey. And as a pastor, getting to help someone get to that place is so meaningful.
Yeah.
So probably I would say that's the most recent aha moment, was
Right.
watching several of my now dear friends
Yeah.
be like, oh, God actually does care about me.
Yeah.
And I can both love myself and the world, even when the world's hurting me.
Yeah. Wow.
And so
You were,
great stuff.
Talking about Ireland a little earlier, and part of my call story was with an Irish priest, Andrew O'Sullivan, and we met on an airplane, and then he invited me to his parish residence a couple weeks later, but had dinner, and he was talking about ministry. I was in college, and he talked about ministry as this sacred privilege where you're invited into the most intimate experiences of people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how often does someone get invited into the experience of discovering you're loved by God?
Yeah.
And so might just be able to love yourself too,
Oh, yeah.
It's just,
it is so sacred.
Yeah. So what we've been on a long and winding search for is the right fit, and it was a pastor who would come ready to lead, intellectually curious, and someone who would also be energized working with young people. I think your experience, like you were just talking about, talks to that readiness to lead. That insatiable intellectual curiosity, you're going to fit right in around here. You're the chair of the religion department, wanted you to take this job. I mean, we love this. We love these people, So I want to hear more about, what are you excited about, energized about in working with young people? That'll be, in some ways, a new area of particular focus. When you're off, as you said, kind of being a church planner, you've got to be a jack of all trades. You're working with young people, you're working with old people. You told me about a massive hole in your roof that you had to spend the week figuring that out. Here in the team ministry setting, and working with just more people, we're able to focus in on some things a little bit more. And one of those areas where we're hopeful for some of that leadership is working with our young people. So
absolutely.
Tell us about an experience or two you've had working with a young person, and what you're looking forward to learning about, exploring, experimenting with here with young people.
Well, so I think the really awesome thing is that a lot of my journey up until this point, I think, has prepared me for youth ministry and for young people more specifically.
Yeah.
In that, like all the things we're talking about, how do we translate tradition and history and belief?
Yeah.
How do we reimagine while still remaining faithful?
Yeah.
And also, how do we take really deep theological concepts and make them meaningful and practical day to day?
Yeah.
If that's not like the challenge of youth ministry, right? Like that's it.
Yeah.
And I think if I were to pinpoint a place where does the most aha moment happen in church life, it would probably be in the youth programs.
Yeah.
And it's so cool to watch someone grow up and rediscover or discover for the first time a lot of these really deep things.
Yeah. Right.
And that's great.
Yeah.
So and I've seen that play out. So like you said, my primary goal was sort of the whole church.
Right.
But I did work a lot with youth. I did a high school group and worked with high school and middle schoolers.
Yeah.
And I think the coolest thing was watching them discover Scripture. Because Scripture had been this sort of really constrained thing that and I heard this specifically, I don't know enough, I'm not good enough to read it and do my own work with it.
Yeah.
And I think adults feel that way too sometimes.
Sure.
And so I spent a couple years working with some of these students, and they couldn't believe the stories in Scripture and the characters, and that's what Jesus is really like. One of them said, Jesus is sassier than I thought. Which I was like, yes. Yeah.
I think in my sermon for this week, I'm talking about how so many people got burned by Jesus.
Yeah,
right. He's just
master of it.
Master of the burn.
So that's great. Those are the moments that are really cool.
Yeah.
And the other thing was, especially I was thinking in one student in particular, it was great to affirm her gifts as a leader.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times in church we're so busy trying to get things moving, have programs run well, that we sometimes forget to emphasize and point out the gifts of our students.
Yeah.
And they become they get a little bit pushed out. And so I was like, all right, we're putting our high schoolers on our council.
Sure.
And so it was an amazing decision.
Wow.
And it turned out they were most native to our context, so they understood where to go. They had great ideas. And I was like, okay, we take the energy and vision of our young people and we put the practical knowledge and wisdom of our elders behind them. And it was just a cool synergy.
Wow. Great.
And so I think that's something I'm excited to explore here is what are the ways that's already happening? And how can we amplify that where we empower our young people to be leaders and our high schoolers to sort of take ownership of the programs and see what they can do, because they can do amazing things.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so here we are, you coming from the Methodist tradition, but ready and excited to work in a Lutheran congregation. So share a little bit about that from your point of view. What makes you what made it seem, when we met you and got to know you, it was clear to us that you would be the right fit for the kinds of things we were looking for. What about St. Paul's here in Doylestown and St. Paul's Lutheran was still the right fit for you? And what about this call? Are you excited about and the particularity of this congregation in the Lutheran tradition? Share a little bit about that.
So I don't know if you know, but this is just an interesting side note, is John Wesley, the founder of Methodism, he had his aha moment himself while reading Luther.
Yes.
And so there's this
strangely warm.
Yes. He was up until that point just sort of neurotic about good behavior and beating himself up.
Yeah.
And then read Luther's commentary on Romans.
Wow.
And that's the thing that unlocked him. And just a whole movement formed from it.
John Wesley, the founder of the Methodist Church.
Yeah. So, there's a long-standing history of Lutheran and Methodist fellowship and partnership. Which is codified, like you talked about. We have official partnerships.
Yes.
As a pastor, I really think it's important to look at the values and beliefs of a congregation. And there tends to be two sets. There's what you write on the paper, and there's what's lived in real life.
Interesting.
And we'll talk about what's on paper, but for me, what really attracted me here was what I was seeing in real life.
Yeah.
And the vibrancy and the life of the congregation here, the willingness to participate and volunteer. During the interview process, I heard some people's stories, and there was just such a rich and meaningful grappling with faith here.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a one-dimensional thing. It was as I'm listening to people's stories, it's complicated and in this church, there's a space for people to be complicated,
Wow.
which I think is really cool.
Wow, well said.
And I think that stems from the intellectual curiosity.
Sure.
That people are willing to ask the tough questions, people are willing to engage, and are willing to hold Scripture as a deep importance, but are willing also not to only have one reading of it. And that's so helpful.
Yeah.
And I think is like where we are today, I think that addresses so many of the hurts and pains and also the hunger of people today. In 2021. I think having a place where we can grapple honestly, intellectually, and safely, man, like that's church.
I love how you put it. I can be complicated here. Like, to provide a place for that. That's so poignant, the way you put that. And that's really helpful. That makes a lot of sense that you'd be, and I'm thrilled that is what you found the case to be here, and makes sense why you'd be attracted to that.
Yeah, that's great.
So,
and I had one student tell me that she likes St. Paul's because it's a place where everyone knows her name.
Sure.
And to be that while still having hundreds of people on a Sunday, I think that's a huge compliment.
Yeah, because I think that's one of the other great human desires is to be known, right? You know, to be known, to be loved, and so often that starts with naming, you know.
And
so, lastly, you also have a personal connection to St. Paul's Lutheran Church, and we must hear about that. So, tell us the story because it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So my wife Bridget was supported and nurtured by St. Paul's.
Yeah, and she was one of the first small group leaders at this church.
Is that right?
7 years ago.
I didn't know that.
Bridget led a young adult small group.
Dang, leading the charge.
First semester, the fall of 2013. There it is. So yes,
that's awesome.
Bridget
That's
Wendell.
amazing.
Yeah.
So there you go. She's been here and formed here, and her family. You know, the Wendells are definitely part of the team here.
Yeah.
And that was actually like so we met and started dating in North Carolina. She was on an internship.
Yeah.
She was at a beautiful high church, sort of mover and shaker church, steepled church.
Yeah.
And I was working with a church that intentionally wouldn't own a building.
Yeah.
And so that's it was a match made in heaven from day one. And it was wonderful. So and we met, and the funny thing is, we were doing a volunteer thing. I was 2 weeks from leaving. I was about to go back to Durham, and I think it was my final year or something. And so we were painting a house, and she came with a team to drop off like Gatorade and donuts.
Nice.
It was like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, I'm from Princeton, da da da," and I made some jokes about Bart, which if you know anything about Princeton, they love Bart. So it's super nerdy. It was like way nerdy.
So great.
As I'm covered in like paint and mud. And so that was it. She left, and I was like, "It was good to know you.
Yeah.
Take care." So she calls my boss and says, "Hey, I would like the number of your intern."
Classic.
And of course, she's such a go-getter, right?
She is.
So my boss comes up to me after work, you know, we're hosing off at this point, and he goes, "Do you remember that intern?" And I was like, "The one with the Gatorade?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Yeah, she wants your number." And I was like, "Oh, okay."
Let's talk Bart or something.
I was like, she seemed cool. But I was so confused because did she want my number to date, or was this sort of a networking opportunity? Well, anyways, I invited her to a church meeting. And that's how we started our relationship.
Wonderful love stories.
Right?
All start at church meetings.
The church meeting, and we ended up after the church meeting getting pizza, and then hung out until like midnight, and it was great. It was so much fun.
Cool.
So anyways, the long story is that's how I got introduced to St. Paul's. I ended up visiting her family, and I think even, gosh, I don't know, it might have been the first time I visited, I ended up coming here.
Yeah.
And had some mutual connections with a few people at Princeton, and got to know Abigail and you. I never thought we would end up here where we are.
Yeah, I mean, we had, Abigail, you know, we knew Bridget so well, And so Abigail did your guys' wedding.
Mm-hmm.
How many years ago was that?
Gosh, 2018.
2018,
Yep.
so a few years ago.
Yep.
And even before that, I think you and I, or around then, maybe a little after then, you and I had lunch because you were just starting your work in Jersey.
Yeah, I was asking you a lot of questions about small groups.
Small groups and stuff like that. And yeah, who would have thought, here we are going to get to team up. And
it's exciting.
I am excited. I think you bring a lot of things that'll be great compliments to the things I try to be here, and bring a unique story, unique gifts, and so pretty cool. And very surprising.
It is.
Yeah.
It's good. It's a good
Yep.
surprise.
Yep. Yeah, I remember when we talked early in the year, we had kind of an initial conversation, and I don't think either. It was more like talking about life in a sense of where God's calling.
Yeah.
You at the time, and to then have you in the interview process.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, interesting. All right, hey, trust the Spirit, see where it goes, and now you got the lights and the camera on you.
Yeah, I know. Here I am. And
Cool.
it's been such a wonderful process so far, and I'm really excited to get to dive in and meet everybody. And
Yeah.
it's been fast and surprising and winding.
Yeah.
But good. you know?
Yeah. And it's not what I thought we were gonna end up with either in a pastor. I was pretty sure we were gonna find someone right out of seminary. I thought it makes sense if it was right that we'd find a woman to kind of complement the mix here. I thought it'd be someone who just had a ton to learn, would come in and just probably be learning for a year or two, and instead we got someone who's just ready to hit the ground running, from LA, from a.
I'm sure I have a lot to learn still.
Oh
but yeah.
man. Well, yeah, but it's gonna be a partnership in a way that I didn't anticipate, and I'm excited about it. I think I'm excited about the ways I'll grow because of you coming here as well as one of our pastors. So that's one thing I'm excited about.
That's awesome.
And,
yeah, me too.
nervous, excited, oh man, what is Brendan gonna push me, to do? And yeah, so I think it'll be a blessed times of blessed discomfort, as you just in that kind of partnership model. I think it'll be, that's where God seems to show up more often, when it's not just predictable. So
Yeah.
I think you'll bring that. I'm looking forward to it. So, well, I have exhausted my questions here. Any last things you want to talk about, or on your mind, or questions you have about St. Paul's or anything like that?
I think I will say I'm excited to get to know the area.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to sign-ups. I don't know if you do. You guys do that here, right? Meetups where you spend some time with a new pastor.
Oh yeah, getting to know. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay,
Yes.
so I'm really excited about that.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think I spent the first 2 years here just inviting myself to people's houses.
Great.
A lot of good
that's
cooks.
that's an expectation.
A lot of great
Okay.
hospitality.
All right.
Yeah, that's the standard. So yeah.
So I'm excited to explore this area and I'll have a daughter in tow, but
Oh my God.
I know it's gonna be crazy. So that's what I'm looking most forward to, is getting to know people, but getting to experience Doylestown and Bucks County and Philadelphia and the whole thing.
Cool. All right, man. Well, thanks for coming in, and thoughts and prayers with you and Bridget as you guys prepare to bring some beauty into the world. And
Thanks. It's been great to be here.
can't wait to have you get started. So that's a wrap.
Awesome.
Nice work, man.
This was fun.